how on earth can we hope at all to have any power, influence, or positive impact if we're completely excluded from that game?
And just to touch upon maybe another reason that I think you're quite passionate about, and you mentioned it yesterday when we were preparing for the podcast, is that a lot of Muslims will see creating impact from an ummah and generating wealth as two mutually exclusive parts of their life.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah, this is a topic that's very close to my heart. And I think it's one that actually is very problematic, even if people don't realize it. I think often, and I see this in many contexts, and we can go into it, I think people often, exactly as you said, feel that, okay, I want to do good for the ummah, I want to benefit the ummah. There is no Muslim who doesn't think that way. But they compartmentalize that and box it off as something separate to their career or their day job or what they spend most of their time doing. I mean, the reality is we live in a capitalist society and state where we have to earn money and we have obligations we have to fulfill. And to do that, we have to typically work a day job or do something that requires the majority of our waking hours. And we, for some reason, believe that can never be the same as benefiting the ummah, which I hope, in the case of NIA and many other organizations like Roots, is proving otherwise. And I think until we shift that mindset, we are going to hold ourselves back and have nowhere near the amount of impact and benefit we can have as individuals or collectively until we shift that mindset.
Yeah, definitely. And to read another quote of yours, I like quotes, gives context, is you said, quote, "The key isn't avoiding wealth. It's pursuing it with the right intentions and using it strategically to create lasting change. When we build successful businesses, we build influence. When we generate wealth, we create opportunities to solve real problems." Yeah.
No, thank you for bringing that up. So I think a really good example of that is when I talk to investors, especially Muslim investors. I've had actually investors say to me, listen, this is nice. If it was a charity, I would donate. And that's totally understandable in isolation. We need charities. People should donate to charities, and that's important. But we have to take a step back, look at the context of the world. And I think this is really important for university students especially to understand. Like, we live in a world, as I said, not just of trillion-dollar companies, but we live in a world and a society where, fortunately or unfortunately, corporations have ultimate influence, power, and control. And as Muslims, we care about having a positive impact on the world. How on earth can we hope at all to have any power, influence, or positive impact if we're completely excluded from that game? Yeah. If we're outside here doing just charity, just volunteering, which needs to be done, do not get me wrong, it's wonderful stuff, people should do it. But if we allocate our thinking and doing about benefiting the ummah purely to the third sector, we are excluding ourselves from actually the number one way to impact, influence, and empower the world and our community.
Yeah. And on that note then, we've mentioned how it's important to have connections, it's important to have this influence. To break into this world of startups and building big businesses and venture capital, do you need to have lived that life, gone through Deloitte, gone through a VC corporation where you're a VC yourself? Is that important? Because, of course, that's part of your experience.
For sure. So this is a super relevant question. And I know it's very easy for me to say no because I did work in VC and then I built a VC-backed startup. But I think it's important to acknowledge that I had never heard of VC like when I graduated. Didn't know what it was. Okay, maybe I'd seen the term floating around, but I had no idea. Even when I started in a VC fund, that's only when I realized what it actually is and what it can unlock. And for sure, we can talk about that if that's useful. But I think the really important thing to understand is taking a step back, looking at the macro view of the world, and especially you as a uni student. Unfortunately, we're trapped in this paradigm where it's very hard to think long-term or think big because very few people do that, and schooling and university and even our community actively discourages that. Yeah. We're taught to think about the next exam, the next job, the next promotion, and you should think about those things. Yeah. But that shouldn't be 100% of your time. You should at least spend 10, 20% taking a step back and thinking, what context am I in? What can I achieve long-term? Because alhamdulillah, we have pretty long life expectancies now. So the point I'm making is, if you actually take a step back and think about what does it take to build a business, raise VC funding, and go far and have insane amounts of impact and scale, never ever in the history of humanity has it been easier to do that than now, ever. And it's becoming easier by the day if you look at the models and platforms that are coming out. It is genuinely possible now for one person to build a company that would have taken 10, 20, 30 people to build 5 years ago. That's the reality.
Yeah.
So in that context, no, I don't think you need all these things. You need to be clued up. You need to work hard. You need to understand what is VC, what is startups. You need to study examples. You need to try and talk to people who at least have basic understanding in the space, which is actually way more doable than you think. And therefore, you don't need the connections to make it happen.
Yeah.